What is, in your opinion, the most important invention/discovery in the entire history of mankind? The needle. With it, our ancestors were able to rapidly turn fur blankets into clothing and migrate out of Africa to colder climates. Underrated comment? I hadn't thought about that. Though I'm sure the out of Africa expansion took place with humans adapting to colder climates via wearing fur pelts and cloaks around themselves like we wear towels, you're right. Rope, cloth, and so many manufactured materials and techniques have their origins via the humble needle. Not the most important, but the internet is great for transferring knowledge between generations and cultures, so definitely a major one. It may seem like a lot hasn't been accomplished, but being able to learn about whatever you are interested/need in the moment is invaluable to wider education. Think new parents trying to figure stuff out. If it's a Saturday night and you're worried about your baby, sorry, you're not going to sleep until that library opens and you happen to find that the behavior is perfectly normal. The internet is great, but the true power is in its potential. The early internet was nothing like it is now. The current internet was shaped by millennials. The internet really took off when most of us were kids/teens, so we were the first generation to grow up with it in most households. Our parents didn't use it much, but we spent all of our time online in chat rooms and forums, and all that stuff. Now that we're adults, we got jobs, and we controls the markets. The internet has expanded so much in the areas that millennials found important as kids. It's evolved to the point where people share their entire lives on the internet. Now that the internet is in every household, there are exceptions. It's going to change even more. It already has in the past few years, and in 10 years we will be using it in a completely different way. Indoor plumbing. Without it, there would be no Benihana glory holes. You'd have to get your dick sucked through other means, perhaps a hole in an outhouse or a hole through a regular wall. Benihana would go out of business if this were the case. The Haber process. Though farming, I would say, is more important, the Haber process allowed the human population to grow from 1.6 billion in 1900 to 7.7 billion. The guy which the process is named after also invented mustard gas and was a jerk in general. Actually, electricity was pretty useless for a long time. The thing that turned it into what it is was Michael Faraday's discovery of electromagnetic inductance. Connecting electricity, and magnetism led to not only a way of producing electricity for our personal use, but also the electromagnetic spectrum, such as radio transmission, and even to our current mathematical understandings of light. Faraday's invisible lines of force almost single-handedly shaped our modern world. The steam engine, honestly. There were some pretty nice inventions throughout history, but humanity's level of technological advancement was essentially capped and unable to progress for thousands of years. They'd make tiny little things here or there, even coming up with theoretical concepts for more advanced machines, but they were never practical to make or use, until steam power. They had dinked around with it off and on since the 1st century AD, but it never really got off the ground until around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and the improvements made to it and mass production of the concept became a big deal. That period in history is when we went from essentially primitive people to transition into modern humans that use machine and technology for everything. And even to this day, we get lots of our power from steam turbines. They just happen to be in nuclear power plants now, but it's still steam power giving you the electricity to run all your other devices. Mostly anyway. Some places still use a lot of hydroelectric power, but still steam engine is number one for me. You're correct, but missing a key detail. Steam power was the first invention that allowed mankind to break away from natural power sources, muscles, wind, gravity, etc. Steam is portable, powerful, artificial. It is the key technology that breaks man away from the limits of nature and his own sweat. Came here to post this one. Totally freed people from slave labor and subsistence farming and created food surplus to put an end to mass starvation and reliance on the harvest every year. Being able to produce so much food you could stockpile and use less people so others could work in cities and other crafts and trades. The Torricelli vacuum tube. Literally just a pipe filled with mercury, flipped upside down into a bath of mercury. Creates a weak vacuum inside and also, and completely unexpectedly at the time, allowed people to predict the weather by paying attention to the fluctuating levels. That single invention created meteorology, radically altered physics and cosmology, upset age-old philosophy, and was essential for our industrial revolution. The changes in pressure. Meteorology is a branch of science people don't pay enough attention to these days. The same guys who predict, excuse the pun, whether or not it's going to rain tomorrow will also be the same guys to tell you to get the out here cause a hurricane is coming. Toilet paper. Yeah, fire and the wheel and the written word in farming are all key inventions for our history. And we wouldn't have gotten to the point where we are today without them. But we'd still be fully functioning animals without them, just like all the other animals. And they were inevitable inventions. Toilet paper came at a crucial point in our history, and without it, we wouldn't have progressed with things like plumbing or cell phones or hygiene or medicine as much as we have without it. I think there are really three big contenders: farming, writing, and industrialization. Farming was huge for a lot of reasons. Even though the first farmers actually had a worse diet than hunter-gatherers, farming let you have a stable food supply and settle down. It's hard to be able to encourage speculation, which leads to inventing things, without knowing when your next meal is. Writing was a major advancement too. With writing you can reliably store information about skills, safe foods, etc., without worrying about the person telling you misremembering the event as much. Writing makes it so anyone can leave information somewhere without having to have a person there. Writing lets you prevent losing knowledge with the death of individuals or regression of knowledge. Think about how hard it would be to teach someone if you can't write stuff down. If your teacher dies, you're SOL on learning what you wanted. It's why the printing press was a big deal. Industrialization is arguably as important as farming, though we rarely think of it in the same sense. Machinery made it so that things were significantly more affordable. You no longer had a single person making items by hand. People were able to actually improve their standard of living because all these items were cheaper, and combined with urbanization, more public works were created. Don't get me wrong, there were still plenty of issues with working conditions, sanitation, and the like, but it was a massive quality of life improvement. Sharp rocks. No, not farming or livestock or writing. Sharp rocks. Simple tool use, carving and skinning. The ability to get large amounts of food quickly by trimming meat of half-eaten carcasses, with the added ability to process things like fibrous plants with a sharp tool. Boom, suddenly hominids had a bunch of free time. Also some cool clothes. The free time that followed from that efficiency is what gave hominids like Homo habilis the opportunity to imagine new ways to make things better. And everything from irrigation to SpongeBob memes has stemmed from that point. Without that advancement, we'd be indistinguishable from other great apes today. The domestication of the horse and related equines. We went from carrying stuff on our backs, on riverboats or slow as F cattle, to being able to travel long distances at comparatively warp speed. Culture and trade became much more global once that happened. It also helped bolster our agricultural revolutions, and also completely changed warfare for the rest of time. Note, you can ride cows and llamas and donkeys, but nothing beats the speed and agility of a horse. And horses are a pretty new domestication event. At only 3,500 BC, there are pyramids older than that. When I was a kid, I was in a class where a woman dressed in old-timey clothes talked to us about living in the 1880s. We asked her about something she couldn't live without. After asking us the same question, she eventually said water on demand. Sure, a creek or a well is nice, but to be able to just turn a tap and get water right there in the kitchen, that was fabulous.